You're listening to episode 223 of Mitolife Radio. I'm Matt Blackburn, your host, and today I'm doing a best of show. This is actually the first episode that I ever recorded for this podcast, and it was with David Milburn of Air Oasis and Hypoallergenic Air. I met David several years ago at his booth at a health conference, and I was really impressed. And that was by far my favorite booth at the whole biohacking conference that I was attending. Like water filtration, air filtration is a similar industry in that there's a lot of claims that are made and a lot of marketing. What drew me to David's products is that they're very straightforward with their information. They don't make wild, extravagant claims. On their website, they actually state air quality is not a one-size-fit-all. Air quality is complex. They say no single technology or product is optimal for every situation or contaminant type, despite what some may claim. Our current array of air purifier products utilize between 1 and 6 of the following technologies depending on the application. So there's polar ions, germicidal UV, APCO, washable, H14 HEPA, and carbon. I've been using all of their filters for several years now, and my favorite part of their technology is the polar ions, which uses carbon brush nodes to split water vapor into 2 different types of ions, which are dispersed throughout the building. I'll let David get into the details of that. So enjoy the show. Here is David Milburn. All right, so we're here with David Milburn with Hypoallergenic Air Filter. And I found this technology about 3 years ago at the Bulletproof Conference. And I think that was actually the main reason why I was there. Was I came across this booth and it made my day. I was so excited. I nerd out about air quality and simple things. And I was just really impressed with the technology and the research behind it. And I think I picked the guy's brain for like a good half hour and bought one on the spot. And I'm at the point now where I have one in every room of my cabin. I made a short YouTube video talking about it. And I've been in the health community for nearly a decade now, and I just see so much BS, so much overpriced stuff out there, especially with air filters. There's a lot of marketing campaigns and Facebook and Instagram ads, and I always try to sift through and find the best stuff. And so I really like the affordability and the effectiveness of this filter. So in this podcast episode, we're just going to dive in with David and really just break it down with this technology and its benefits and practicality and use and why everyone should have one, especially living in a city. So thanks for being here, David. Welcome to the show.
Oh, absolutely. It's good to be here with you, Matt. I know we've been kind of tracking with this conversation for a couple of years now. You always have the best questions, and we love your audience as well. We've gotten a lot of good feedback from them, and we've had some good, off the books conversation with them as well. Excellent questions. People that are very serious about their health and considering the impacts of what something like air does for their lives and their bodies. And it's something most people don't consider. It's easy to ignore. So that's where we come in. We try to educate and be transparent and authentic with how complex air quality is and how often overlooked the things that are causing us troubles or benefiting us are when it comes to air.
Yeah, well said. And I work with clients and people that are dealing with chronic illnesses. And I think we tend to neglect the simple things like air quality, water quality. And I think air quality is one of the easiest things to mitigate. Just like your water, you need a filter. But what kind? I mean, you go to Costco, you go online to Amazon, and it's just so overwhelming.
Yeah, one of the stats that came out last year was the World Health Organization actually listed air quality as the number one environmental health hazard. And a lot of times we think of outdoor pollution in that category, which is definitely a factor. But as many of your listeners probably know, our indoor air quality is multiple times worse than outdoor in most cases. And so this is something that, our noses just can't pick up a lot of times. We don't realize everything that we're consuming. And we may get into this, but it has a lot to do with dosage. So, there's a lot of good things in our air, a lot of bad things in our air, a lot of bacteria in our environment, a lot of mold, all those things. But when you get way too much of something in an environment and in your lungs, that's where the problems start to arise in many cases.
Yeah, well said. I've noticed a lot of people with mold exposure or VOC exposure.
Definitely.
That's a lot of the education, is letting people know they're not going to stay at a hotel and die overnight, but it's the constant daily accumulation that can lead to a chronic illness, like a really serious one.
Yeah, and the estimates that I've heard range from about 10 to 25% when it comes to something like mold that will have a very adverse reaction. So, 3 people might walk into a room, totally fine, don't notice it. It smells a little musty, no problems. That 4th one walks in, it could be crippling for them. And so we all do react differently. We have different tolerances to some of these contaminants that we come up against, and that can have a big effect on our health. So, yeah, absolutely. So how I got into air quality was back in 2011, and I started with just a Honeywell simple cylindrical air filter. Kind of grew up with that style, the high efficiency particulate air filter. And over the years, I've just bought used ones at thrift stores, but I would actually make it pretty complicated. Eventually, I had a setup of a HEPA filter, a negative ion generator, an essential oil diffuser, and then activated charcoal packs all over the place. And during my health journey, I've realized a lot of it is efficiency and simplification. Otherwise, it just gets too complex and it's not sustainable. So I've basically just come down to now using HEPA and your filters. And that's my only mitigation strategy for indoor air quality. And I think that's very effective. Sure.
But in my car, I throw an activated charcoal pack in there to absorb all the synthetic volatile organic compounds. So I've had a lot of just experimentation, and
that's good.
And I'm so excited to find your technology, because it's so affordable and it works so well. So, if you just want to explain how you got into this business and how you found this technology and.
Sure. So I actually work on the business side of the company, and I work with the primary investor. So we actually came alongside the founders, which are the real scientist type guys. They're the ones that invented our primary technologies. They're the ones at our manufacturing facility in Texas, constantly improving, coming out with new innovations, new product applications. So we actually came alongside the founders. They had something great. We saw the potential. We still do. It's extremely, early stage to what our plans are, because there's so much opportunity to improve how we deal with and how we consider air quality in our, various environments. And so that was about 8 years ago when we invested quite a bit of capital into this company, and we've spent a lot of time building out our various case studies, university studies, commercial applications. There are so many verticals that our company is involved with that focusing is one of the issues. But because of the diversity of the applications that we deal with, we use the same technology in a hospital that we do in your home. It's the same technology in the tallest building in the world, which is a client, in a professional sports team, all these commercial clients, military, law enforcement, aerospace companies, these are all clients of ours. And we solve some of the toughest air quality and surface sanitization issues in the world. And because we're not just this little retail product on the shelf that's got a basic filter and a fan that makes you feel better. We're actually dealing with really real world issues, and that same technology, that same expertise is what we bring to the home as well. So we have quite a bit of experience with air quality. It's all we do. That's kind of what we live and breathe, you could say. So we're excited. We're excited to be here. We especially love the biohacking community because they're people that are already considering the impact of air. A lot of people don't. And so unless they have a very acute issue, it's something they can overlook. So.
Yeah. And I'm really big into preventative care. And as we know, the hospitals are lacking that. They're really good at treatment, but not at prevention. So when I think about prevention, I just think of air, water, just the basic things. And that's a big part of my message. So can you go into the technology? It's my understanding that it releases two types of particles into the air, because I think a lot of people have this misconception that it's actually that for a filter to work, it actually has to suck in particles, right? But this one actually emits particles.
Yeah. So, you've mentioned a few types of air purification, and we have all of those as well, including our own proprietary ones. And so, conventional filtration is based off of a physical filter that you're pushing air through. And everything that's too big in the air is getting caught in the filter. So it's no longer in your air, which is good. But in order for that to be effective, you have to pump that contaminant in and push it through a filter. And that filter begins to clog up. It is expensive to change. And it doesn't deal with what's already in the air in most cases or on surfaces. So there's some drawbacks there. There's some benefits. Something like a HEPA filter is very effective, proven technology, but the limitations really are related to how quickly it can deal with a contaminant in the air as well as something on a surface. And then there's a huge range of contaminants that it cannot touch. Viruses, odors, chemicals. There's a lot. They're too small. They go right through it. And so something like carbon is another great technology, also expensive. You might have to change that out every month. We sell those as well. They can be good in some cases. But that's something as the air comes through with the contaminant, then that activated carbon is able to deal with it, oxidize it. So with our technologies, we started out with a version of photocatalytic oxidation. It's a huge mouthful, and we actually made it more of a mouthful. So our technology is advanced hydrated photocatalytic oxidation. So the original PCO technology is maybe something that you or your listeners have heard of, and that was what NASA developed for future deep space missions, where their original goal was to deal with ethylene gas, which is produced by fresh produce as it grows. So they had to figure out, okay, how do you deal with this chemical? How do you make it efficient, cheap, compact, low maintenance? Because, this is for going to Mars kind of thing. So they were thinking ahead. So that original technology used UV light, which is sunlight, and it reacted with a titanium dioxide catalyst, which is a type of metal. So that process produces hydroxyl radicals, which is HO negative. And this is a process that happens in Earth's atmosphere. So we don't really think about it a lot, but Earth's atmosphere is constantly purifying the air outside. That's the fresh air. There's all kinds of phenomena that take place. There's sunlight, as well as this catalytic process. So hydroxyl radicals are extremely effective in breaking down contaminants. So that original PCO technology, that's what it did. Produced hydroxyl radicals, very effective. There's a number of products on the marketplace that use it, but it's only effective with air that passes right by the catalyst surface, because the hydroxyl radicals have a very short half-life. So once they're created, they're pretty much gone immediately. They're very reactive, and so that they're bonding with things, they're breaking them down pretty much immediately. So what we did is we brought out our own proprietary catalyst, which is more than just titanium dioxide. It's about 5 different metals, and we've got a number of innovations involved there that if we want to get into it, we can a bit. But basically, we increased the amount of reactions that take place and the types. So we can get into those as well. But beyond hydroxyl radicals, we produce hydroperoxides. And these are catalytic ions that are able to be blown throughout the air in a room and actually react with, say, a contaminant in the air after it's been sneezed or on a surface where mold is growing. So those are actually able to be blown out through the room. And we can talk about like negative ionizers as well, because they made similar claims, but they couldn't travel very far. It's a negative oxygen ion. It bind together, it'd create a black dust on the wall near the unit, so that they would bind with each other, bind with other things quickly and not travel far. Our hydroperoxides can travel very long distances, from, say, like the top of a building in the air handler, these big AC units can travel all the way through the ductwork into the rooms of the building and sanitize the air and surfaces throughout. So it's quite a difference. So that was our original technology. And then we also have a polar ionization, which has a number of other benefits that we can kind of talk about the specifics of, but that produces high levels of positive hydrogen ions and negative oxygen ions. So that's breaking down water, H2O, into hydrogen and oxygen. So that's also a very effective technology that is proprietary. So that's kind of the difference. But when it comes down to it, our technologies are able to safely 24/7 deal with contaminants in the air and surfaces throughout an entire building, whether that's one room, whether that's an entire home, anything. It doesn't matter to us. We can cover all the spaces all the time. And so instead of a conventional filter where you have to pump the air in and push it through a filter, and then it becomes clogged and you don't deal with something that falls on a surface, we're constantly doing it. And then on the flip side, like in a hospital, what they're used to is technologies where you actually have to evacuate the room in order to clean it. You bring in this $80,000 UV robot that shines tons of sunlight basically in the room for half an hour and hope it kills everything. Well, you can't have people in there. You do that maybe once a week. Or maybe you fog the room with bleach or hydrogen peroxide or whatever it is in really high quantities. So you have to get everyone out of the room. So the difference is with ours, we're able to constantly purify the air, constantly sanitize the surfaces safely. So that's a big difference. And same thing with like an ozone generator. We have products that do and don't produce ozone in smaller quantities. So ozone, you can find it in Purist National Park, in Alaska, Denali National Park. Our purifiers often produce quantities of ozone similar to what you would be breathing on a mountainside. But that ozone is part of a process that produces hydroperoxides. And then we also have the hydroxyl radicals. So we have a bunch of naturally occurring catalytic molecules that are able to deal with the contaminants versus really high quantities of a single type. So that's one of the differences.
Awesome. That's all really great stuff. I actually learned some stuff I didn't know before. And just to clarify, so if I'm understanding correctly, it's releasing basically two categories of particles. One is catalyzing, which is hydroxyl radicals. And then the other one is polarizing, which is hydrogen ions and negative oxygen ions. Is that kind of correct?
Yeah. So, particles might be a little misleading because they're really molecules, but there's several modes of action and they're pretty similar between a lot of them. But oxidizing is one of the main ones. So that's with, something like formaldehyde. It's a chemical. You're actually breaking apart the hydrogens and carbons through oxidation. So that'd be a mode of action from the various ones. With the polar ions, because they have a charge, positive, negative, they can have a different effect. So they can actually get physical particulates to clump together, and so that they're bigger and they're heavier. So they can weigh out of the air. They can attach to a filter, and that's really important because even a dead bacteria or a dead, like mold spore, that can still be harmful to your health. So even if you kill it, getting that actual body out of the air is important. And same with something like a PM2.5 particulate. These smaller particulates are the ones that can travel deeply into our lungs and cause issues. So through the ionization with the charge, you're able to clump those together so they're no longer dangerous and get them out of the air that we're breathing. And then our technologies are also able to disrupt the RNA and DNA of simple cell viruses, bacteria, mold, prevent replication. And so those are a few of the modes of action.
That's the thing that mainly sold me on this filter. I'm super into fruit, and the pictures that you guys have, I mean, David sent me tons of PDFs. The amount of research behind this technology is just incredible. And on how it prevents mold is just incredible. Is it a 93% reduction or 99?
Well, I mean, those type of percentages are a little simplifying because it all has to do with what units you're using and what situation. One example would be, we do work with like a cheddar factory in Italy, and they've got $750,000 worth of cheddar cheese aging in a room. In that study, we're using units that are able to remove, 97%, 98% of yeast and fungus. You're able to be preventing those on the surfaces of the cheese itself as it ages as well. So, yes, 99.999% is absolutely possible and is something that, we do, but it all has to do with the real world situations. The idea is that you're constantly dealing with these contaminants and that you're, depending on the environment that you need, that's how much of our products that you put on the table. But with one of our recent studies on our iAdapt series, which we could talk about, it showed 99.998% reduction of influenza in the air within 20 minutes. So these are, very powerful, units. And so when it comes to mold, all the biologicals, bacteria, viruses, chemical gases, VOCs, particulates, those are all things that we deal with.
Awesome. Yeah, I asked my audience what questions they have for you, and I have a good list here. So I could, just throughout this interview, I'll just ask you different ones. And this is actually a good segue. Someone was wondering about dust in our home. It consists of what, and what's the best way to prevent it? It's my understanding that's mostly dead skin cells, right? Which is an allergen.
Yeah, dust, I mean, I think it's just a general category, really. But the particulates in our air, the bigger ones are not the ones to be concerned with. It's the smaller ones. So the PM 2.5 is maybe the buzzword that people have heard. That's the actual diameter of very fine particulates. There's also ultrafine particulates, but the smaller particulate pollution is the one that's actually of concern to our health. But when it comes to how to remove it, our technologies do it. They knock it out of the air. Physical filtration is taking care of it. So that'd be, HEPA filters, any type of filter that's, of sufficient quality, that's going to be trapping it and getting it out of the air. So there's a variety of means to deal with it. But oftentimes, you might see like a ray of sunshine in a room. And if you see a bunch of little floaties, that's probably not good. So you want to deal with that. Those aren't necessarily harmful to you, but, it kind of speaks to what else is in your air that you maybe can't see. So definitely something to tackle.
Awesome. Yeah. And you guys combined recently, right? A HEPA with the Hypoair technology? Yeah,
with our latest product line, the iAdapt series, it does have true HEPA, carbon, as well as our technologies, which includes UV light, the APCO, and the polar ionization. So that is an example where by adding filtration, you actually reduce your coverage a bit as far as size coverage, but you're able to speed up how quickly you can deal with a contaminant. And when it comes to heavier particulate situations where there's more like physical matter in the air, a filter like that can be helpful. So we actually brought out that product for our clients in China that deal with very heavy particulate pollution, and having physical filters there can be helpful to deal with those type of contaminants on a quicker basis.
Awesome. I remember one of our conversations, you mentioned it's not recommended, but if you say hypothetically you smoked a cigarette in a hotel room, it would clear it. And one of my friends asked the question. He lives in a house with cigarette smokers.
Yep.
Even when they keep it in the room, I guess it fills the whole house. So
sure.
this filter takes care of cigarette smoke really effectively, right?
Yeah, so cigarette smoke is obviously not recommended for people. So there's a couple elements there to what's going on. So you have the physical particulate pollution, like the actual smoke that you're seeing. It is producing PM 2.5, which is those little finer particulates, and that's often what's attributed to the lung cancer. So that's getting deep into your lungs, that bad stuff. Also, I've seen estimates that about 2,000 different chemicals are being produced when you smoke. So that's the VOCs. So you've got that chemical pollution as well. And because of the nature of cigarettes, it's not just in the air, but it's going to get on surfaces. It's going to get on, clothing and carpets and walls, you name it. So it's very harmful and difficult for people to deal with. And so we have clients that even their neighbors smoke and it's below them. And it's actually coming through the floor. It's coming, like they can smell it in their kitchen. They can't stand to live in their home because their neighbors smoke. And this isn't just outside air. It's actually that difficult. So when it comes to our technology, we actually work with casinos with extremely poor air quality. So we have, again, the same technology we use with them is what we would have in like an iAdapt. But we have units that they put into a hotel room after someone smokes and purifies the air, and it's oxidizing it from the surfaces. So if all you did was put a filter in there and then you left and came back, you're still going to smell smoke because all those, all the damage has been done on the surfaces as well. So you need a technology that's doing both. So yeah, the answer is we absolutely deal with it. It is a very difficult contaminant to deal with. So it's important. But yeah, we have a lot of customers that, hey, they can't stand to be in this car with this person because their car smells so bad, even if they're not smoking. They can put our unit in there and take care of that, or their neighbors do it, or they're actively doing it. And, we talked about ionization, the polar ionization. We actually have videos of what we call a smoke chamber test, where you fill it with cigar smoke and it's just solid smoke, and you turn on the polar ionizer and you just watch all the smoke just disappear. About 30 seconds. So even while it's happening, we can provide the best protection you're going to get.
Incredible. That's really cool. Yeah. Whenever I stay at a hotel, I wake up and I feel the scratchy throat, and
sure.
It's probably mostly the synthetic VOCs. So I usually bring the Air Angel with me.
Yeah.
You guys have that awesome portable small unit for a couple $100 and super effective for travel.
Yeah. We hear stories all the time. People that travel, they wake up with a bloody nose. They can't sleep well, whatever it is. Especially when you're in a new environment, sometimes you're a little bit more aware of what's in that environment. So there's a lot of things in hotel rooms, and it's not necessarily anything against, like, say, the management of a hotel. They might be doing everything they can, in a practical basis, but they really need our technology. So we are working with a number of very high-end, world-famous hotels to put our technology installed in the rooms, as well as to use it for essentially remediation purposes. So our technology, again, it's not just the odors, not even just the chemicals, but we're killing the bacteria on that remote control in the hotel room, or the light switch, or the MRSA on the floor in the bathroom. So there's a lot that they deal with. And hotels, they see all kinds of crazy stuff too. They have people cook over an open fire in hotels. They have all kinds of crazy stories that we've heard. So yeah, they use our technologies, our products, to get those rooms back into circulation, make sure they're healthy. And a lot of times, one of the things we deal with is how they're cleaning, because sometimes the cleaning chemicals they're using is what is triggering the allergic reactions, essentially, from the guests. Yes, they go in there and they just go crazy, spraying everything, trying to clean it, trying to do a good job. And we've actually taken VOC monitors into those rooms, and you can see, the VOCs go from like 0 parts per billion to like 800 parts per billion instantly, just by spraying the chemicals. So we do work with them, trying to work with more hypoallergenic, cleaning sprays. And if all they're doing is just trying to bleach the room in one go, you can see how they're trying to do a good job and really overdo it. but that's not helpful either. So they need something like our technology that's constantly purifying the air, sanitizing the surfaces, and then using more, environmentally sensitive, cleaning chemicals that are also effective. So.
Yeah, I know there are a lot of eco-friendly or healthy cleaning services now cropping up that actually use cleaner products. But that's a really great point that you made, because, in my cabin, I have carpeted flooring, and there's flame retardants in there. And then, no matter if you're in a cabin in the woods, you still have paint, and that's likely not painted with VOC-free paint. Right. So a lot of people don't realize, like, we're exposed to thousands of chemicals every day. That's why I'm a big fan of sweating in a dry far infrared sauna. But if we could just go into VOCs for a second, I know that there are natural ones when you walk in the forest and you're breathing in terpenes and all of these things. And then there are synthetic volatile organic compounds that are off-gassing from plastic and carpet and paint. So can you talk about how those affect our health and basically how effective the Hypoair is at mitigating those? Because that's been my focus for years, is the VOCs. I think they're an unspoken issue,
Yep. Yeah. I mean, so VOCs, volatile organic compounds, they're off-gassing from all kinds of things that we're using, paints and, disinfectants, cosmetics, you name it, most of our furniture. So there's all kinds of sources for VOCs. And I think one of the big things to consider again with this is dosage. So when we're inside, we're sealing up our homes really tight to be energy efficient, which is a nice thing. But we're also sealing in all these gases and creating a perfect environment for microbes and everything else. But when you seal it up really tight, and then you're bringing in all this furniture, paint, all these things that are off-gassing, that's producing quantities of VOCs that can be really irritating, harmful, unhealthy. Some VOCs are definitely more hazardous than others. But in general, you're not wanting to expose yourself to this all the time. They can definitely have negative consequences. They're odorous, and they're not healthy for you to be exposed with. So something like a VOC, it's a chemical compound. So you're not going to be trapping that in a filter. So you do need something like our technology that's actually going to be breaking it down on a molecular level. And so we're going to be converting a VOC into H2O. So basically into its building blocks, you're breaking it down to make something that's perfectly safe.
That's incredible. And I think the takeaway for this podcast, for me too, is that like you said, the smaller particles are more of the issue, because people tend to think of the particulates like the big ones that a HEPA would take care of. But really, it's the VOCs, the viruses, the mold that gets us. And those are something that a HEPA won't take care of. So I like to prioritize a filter like this over a HEPA.
Yeah, I mean, a true HEPA is going to be effective against some of those finer particulates, like the PM 2.5s. But yeah, something like a virus is just going to go straight through, and VOC straight through. So you do need a multi-pronged approach in some cases. You can't oversimplify it, as I think our industry is very guilty of doing. So yeah, there's awesome. A lot going on in your air, right? But yeah, so some of like to go back to the VOCs, like formaldehyde, which I mentioned before, it's got carbon, it's got 2 hydrogens and an oxygen. So we got to break that apart into its components. So that CH2O is going to become carbon dioxide and water. So
that's really cool.
Things that we're used to breathing. And this is the same thing that happens in Earth's atmosphere as pollutants rise. So they're being oxidized. The sunlight in the air is reacting with the minerals in the air. But it has a lot to do with dosage. So oxygen, O2, you can get oxygen toxic. So you can actually be poisoned by too much quantities of oxygen. So our air is naturally made up of all kinds of different good stuff. But you get too much of these VOCs and crazy unnatural quantities in our homes. And that often is what's leading to a lot of negative consequences.
Yeah. And ozone machines, is that what you're referring to when you say that the earth has its natural cleansing mechanisms? Like I have a water ozonator that uses corona discharge. And in the near the beginning of this interview, we were talking about ultraviolet light with the metal plate. And that's what this uses, to my understanding, to bubble ozone into the water. And it's really, people don't think about it's how the compound is made, correct? That's like a really, really key point to how toxic it is.
So the process of making it could produce other things that are not, desirable, or it could produce things in quantities that are not desirable.
Nitrates, I think.
Mm-hmm. So with ozone specifically, one of the things that we've encountered is if all you're doing is producing ozone, a lot of times you're producing maybe too much at a time, and that can be irritating to some people. But ozone is a really important part of Earth's atmosphere. So it's naturally occurring. But again, you get things too out of whack, and that's going to cause problems for people. So how you produce it has a couple different considerations. That has to do with the cost of the unit, the amount of maintenance, how much it's producing. Does it continue producing that much? Does it produce more over time? Does it produce less over time? So those are some of the considerations. But yeah, so Earth's atmosphere, ozone's one of those things. Hydroxyl radicals, which we mentioned before, sunlight, all these things are part of what takes place outside to purify our air. So, the ozone layer of our atmosphere is a really important part. So it is a bit of a hot topic. You have people that are very against ozone. You have people that are very for ozone. I think it's something that you have to consider without simplifying it too much. So if you dumb down the conversation too much, it's easy to say, okay, ozone's bad, or ozone's good, but
yeah. I've had friends that put an ozone generator in a moldy space,
sure.
In their car that had a,
sure.
I used to pick up spring water, and I dumped like 10 gallons in my car once and just soaked the whole bottom.
Sure.
But what do you think about that strategy? The Hypoair would be a lot safer, right, than putting for mold if there's been mold exposure in a home.
Yeah, so mold is a very insidious thing. It's extremely common, but again, you get that way too out of whack, and especially with the right person, it can have very bad health effects as well as financial effects, because you get mold growing in your home. That can be a very expensive proposition. So with mold, mold is growing on a surface. It's growing in the damp environments. There might have been a leak, a rainstorm, a flood, who knows what it was that created this little perfect environment. Even our AC systems, where there's these cooling coils, all these places are pretty good environments for mold to thrive. And so they're dark, they're musty, so that mold is growing on the surface, and it's producing spores to populate, and it's producing toxins in the air. So those spores are traveling throughout our air. We're breathing those in. So you have to deal with both. So you have to deal with the spores, what's in the air, as well as what's on surfaces. So with a technology like ours, you are dealing with both. So you're actually preventing the mold from growing on the surface, wherever the air is touching. It's not going in the walls or anything like that. But wherever there is mold on a surface, we're preventing it from growing. And then we're dealing with the spores and toxins in the air.
Wow. So this might be an out there question, but let's say someone's renting an apartment, and sometimes we don't find things until after we move in.
Definitely.
And say there's you notice a leak on the ceiling. Would having this filter in there or in every room, whatever, would that basically keep the mold from being released into the environment, even if it's in the walls? Or
yeah, one study which I could share with you or with your listeners was a third party had a home in Australia. Actually, I think it was a 2-bedroom apartment, something along those lines, heavily infested with mold, visible mold everywhere, and they took basically cassette samples where they actually trap air in a little device, and then they see what types of mold are in there, What are the quantities, that kind of thing. Well, they closed up the home, turned off the AC, sealed up all the windows, and then they put one of our units in there. And then 2 weeks later, off the top of my head, I think it was 97% average reduction in every type of, 97% overall reduction. Some of the mold types were completely gone from the air. So you're looking at worst case scenario, completely sealed up. The only thing in that home is our technology working. And so even in that worst case environment, yes, we're providing that protection. Obviously, you want to deal with the source of mold, physical cleaning, deal with the leak, whatever it is. You want to take these things seriously. But in the midst of that, our technology is going to provide the best protection as well as prevent it from coming back. And actually, we just released a product at CES. I think I might have been telling you about, but we call it Mold Guard, actually. Very simple, Mold Guard. It's a simplified version of a lot of our products. It's polar ionization only, no APCO, which means it has no maintenance, no replacement parts for life, and it can cover 100 square feet. So it fits right into an outlet. And so that unit is going to be constantly getting those spores out of the air, breaking down the toxins, and suppressing any mold growth on any surface in the air that it's touching.
Wow. And so just out of curiosity, what's the difference between that and the Air Angel? Just the Air Angel does both?
Yeah, so the Air Angel is it has our APCO technology. So that's APCO is going to be a little bit better against odors and VOCs. And the Air Angel has ionization as well. And then the polar ionization is going to be better against the particulates. And also, this is a side benefit, but really important to some people. It does remove static electricity as well. But other than those two differences, they have a very similar mode of action when it comes to like microbial contaminants, so mold or viruses, those type of things. So this unit's going to be killing, a germ on a door handle or in the air, whatever it is.
That's super cool. Wow. Yeah. So I don't think we've talked, we haven't gotten too deep into air ionization, negative versus positive ions. I've had friends that claim they got sick from a negative ion generator, and I always felt kind of weird from it. Mm-hmm. And you mentioned, creates the black kind of thing, and they say don't put it too close to a wall.
Sure.
Those are generally not safe long term, is my understanding. Is that correct?
So a lot of times negative ionizers are going to be producing either very, very small quantities. If it's just you buy this $20 thing on Amazon, it's probably not doing a lot of anything, to be honest. But depending on how it's doing it, it's producing negative oxygen ions. So O negative. Those are going to like to bind to each other. So O2 and O3. So you can't produce ozone in times, if it's undesirable. And they're also going to be creating kind of a little cloud of effectiveness near the unit, and kind of, leading to that black wall kind of syndrome where like all the, particulates, everything are sticking to the wall. But I wouldn't say that they're harmful in most cases. Okay.
Yeah. Good to know. And
I would say in most cases they're not doing much of anything.
Just ineffective. Yeah. I like to do trips to Costco and just kind of keep an eye on what's, trending and stuff. And
sure.
The cleaning aisle is always fun to walk down and see all the chemicals that people are buying. And
sure.
A couple months ago, I was in there.
Smell all of them as you walk by.
Right? It's like walking through the entrance to a mall. Yeah, the makeup section. Yeah. Yeah, they have those little air freshener plugins, and I was reading the back. It's just the chemicals that they put in there. It's so crazy.
Yeah, we've dealt with that like in Vegas. A lot of times the solution is not removing the bad thing from the air. It's adding chemicals over the top of it to disguise them. So, you don't want to smell smoke, so they want you to smell coconut, but it ends up smelling like smoky coconut. And it's just more chemicals in the air. So a lot of times those deodorizers, just chemicals, fragrances, and there's natural ones too, so this is a broad category, but a lot of times they're using chemicals to just mask odors. So that's probably not ideal in most cases. You want to actually remove the bad stuff, not introduce things that can be an irritant to people.
Have you looked into, I've been using essential oil diffusers and actually kind of like blenders, just blasted through a lot of them to just break down because I'm running them a lot.
Sure.
Have you researched, like a lot of people are into thieves oil, like clove, and I think it's like a 5 oil blend that people claim kills mold. Have you looked into that? Or?
Yeah, I mean, my wife likes thieves oil, so thieves has a lot of essential oils in it, and those are definitely effective at killing biologicals. You've got citrus in there. I can't think a few of the other things at the moment, but again, a lot of those essential oils, really good things. Mm-hmm.
Would you say it fights the hypoallergenic, or do they work together? They don't cancel each other out, right? Or
no, I wouldn't say they fight each other in any case. That's not something we really recommend or don't recommend when it comes to the use of essential oils. But a lot of times how you're using them, you're spraying them on something. But the thing that we're dealing with is getting rid of all the bad stuff in the air and bringing it back into normal balance. And then whatever you're introducing to the air can be, it's more pure, so you're able to just introduce that into the air. And, that.
I guess I was referring to sometimes I diffuse all night long. And so I was wondering if it was oxidizing the oils in the air or something.
I mean, eventually we would maybe be breaking down some of those or getting them out of the air. Sure.
Okay. Interesting. Let's see. So if someone lives less than a mile from a freeway, that was actually my first apartment. I was right by the freeway on-ramp. The Hypoair would be, or over a heavy flight path. Most of those are situations where the hypoallergenic air filter could be super effective, right?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, near where I live in Southern California, we've got Long Beach Harbor, LA Harbor. So it's kind of this big monstrosity. And then there's a freeway that kind of goes north from there. They call it, I think, the diesel highway of death. It's pretty rough, but you've got all these trucks burning diesel, and all this particulate and VOC pollution is covering the area. And the asthma rates in the schools along this corridor are through the roof. And that's the case of a lot of schools because they're often a very central location near more traffic roadways. So yeah, freeways, you're putting out a lot. And so anything, you're pumping those things into your house with some minor filtration in most cases. Otherwise, yeah, they're coming in. So we would certainly recommend, our products.
Yeah. And that kind of segues, if someone doesn't have the money right now, or maybe they could just afford, I would recommend people get their most affordable unit, which is the Air Angel. Just keep that in your bedroom because the bedroom is the place where you spend the most time generally, or at least when you're healing.
Yeah, I mean, most of our products are highly compact and portable. The Air Angel in particular is designed for that use. So if you're moving it around or just using it in a place where you are most of the time, that's going to be a great improvement to what you're doing right now. So.
Yeah. And just simple things that people can do. I've talked about just keeping the windows open, even in the situation that we were just speaking about with the freeway. Would you recommend keeping the windows open? Because the indoor air is up to 100 times more toxic, right, than outdoor air?
Yeah. So I think on average, they guess around 3 to 5. And then, up to 100 times is kind of how it's rated. So outside air is an important part of any type of building's infrastructure. So you're needing to get rid of carbon dioxide, which is we're breathing out. It's not harmful at all, but this is just a process. You got to bring in the outside air, but you want to be purifying the air that you bring in and purifying the air that you're breathing inside. So one of the things we actually do with commercial buildings is reduce their need for outside air. So that for them, it's actually like a percentage. So the higher percentage, the more it costs to treat that air. So make it hotter, make it colder, purify it. But you're also bringing in more particulate pollution. In a lot of cases for these buildings, you're bringing in more pollution in general. So that's not necessarily the best. So we actually try to bring that down to minimum, but then it all depends on where you live. So, I mean, we work with, customers that live right on the ocean. They love having the windows open and our technology working. That's great. You're going to have to deal with possible some mold issues and other possible consequences. But yeah, if depending on where you live, outside air is always beneficial.
So you would say maybe if air conditioning isn't an issue, like where it's pretty perfect temperature where I'm in the mountains, then combining this technology with opening the windows is a good thing to do.
Yeah, definitely.
Awesome. Where do you know where in the world they have the worst and the best air quality? I think the worst is some places in China, right?
I think the real answer is depending on when it is. So air pollution spikes dramatically during something like rush hour or during something like a wildfire. So during some of the recent wildfires that we've dealt with here in California, you and I, San Francisco there was worse than Beijing as far as particulate pollution. So there is some variability there, but China is among the most famous offenders when it comes to a lot of the air quality, and that's from a variety of factors. But I've worked with some big companies when it comes to sensor technology, and when you're jogging, say near a road during rush hour, it's not a good idea because the difference between that same road, that same spot, when you're not exercising and when it's not rush hour, it can be like 20 or 50 times different. So the time of day, the season, what's going on, it can huge impacts.
Are there any apps because I remember I bought this I think it was like a little gimmicky thing on Kickstarter or something
Sure.
that measures the air quality and connects to your phone.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know of any ones that are accurate or any apps or any devices where you can affordably measure the air quality?
Yeah, so our company is actually really actively pursuing that because there haven't been a lot of good solutions, to be perfectly frank. Breezometer is something that you might check out. Instead of using physical sensors, they're using a number of different sources of data to more estimate based off geography, all kinds of factors, including things like rush hour and satellite imaging, all kinds of stuff, to give more real-time information. Because when it comes to a lot of pollution data, there might be a single weather station for the entire city. So that's 1 point of data. So if there was something going on at that exact spot, that's what it's picking up. It has no idea what's happening down the street. You're guessing. So something like Breezometer is I think a good solution to look at an air quality of a city or where you live exactly. But there's a lot of innovation that's taking place there, both to make it more affordable and more accurate, because a lot of times the sensor, all it's doing is just looking at maybe a higher particulate pollution, you're not actually tracking, say, a fine particulate, let alone VOCs or bacteria or anything else that we're talking about. They're using a single point of data to guess. And, we rent some very expensive commercial sensors, and we've taken a VOC sensor into a casino during peak time and it's registered nothing. So even some of the best sensors out there are just not comprehensive in what you're looking at. So you got to kind of take that with a grain of salt, they're good to have, but you can't expect them to give you, a full picture. And that's the case with every testing tool I've really seen. And I can't name names, but, we work with a very, very famous company, that had major air quality issues, and they spent like $15,000 in these canister tests, and they couldn't find what was going on. They could never find it. There's some good sensors. There's a lot of improvement, a lot of innovation there, and that type of information and knowledge is very important for you to make decisions. And for someone that has strong allergies, that's really critical for them to know what's going on today outside.
And
like,
you guys
should
have a
I go for a run? Should I work out inside today? This is important, information to have. So there's a ton of improvement there, and we're really excited about the future of sensors. So
that's awesome. And you guys actually sell a mold test, don't you?
So we sell. So right now, what we do is we sell a Petri dish test kit, and so what that's doing is, you got a Petri dish, and then you're putting in agar, and then what you're doing is you're opening it to the air for an hour, and then biologicals in the air, so bacteria and yeasts and mold and viruses, if they land in there, you're going to seal it up, and it's going to incubate, so you can see it. So that a lot of times gives a good like benchmark idea of, whoa, you got a lot of mold in your air. It's not telling you exactly what type of mold it is. It's not really giving you anything too scientific, but it's a good, do-it-yourself test where you can get an idea of, oh, there's definitely something here. And then
like
you can explore more.
Experiment.
Yeah, exactly. So, but a test like that, you're never going to see a chemical gas. You could have the worst chemical pollution in the world. It's going to not show up at all. So you do have to understand the limitations of these tests. And, our iAdapt series, it has a built-in sensor. So it's sensing for 2 types of particulates, and then it's adjusting accordingly. But again, it's not actively looking for viruses in the air. So each sensor has a very specific purpose in most cases. And it's important to understand some of the limitations of that. But there's a lot of good tests out there. The Petri dish kit is one that you can use to find some of those biological issues you might be dealing with. And then you can explore further.
Awesome. Yeah, it's good stuff. And that's the same with non-native electromagnetic field radiation. All these meters, and people think you just need one, but no,
Sure.
Usually you need multiple sets of eyes to be able to see these toxins.
Yeah, because most sensors are in a single, there's a single point of data, basically. So in that single spot, that's what's going on. So
yep,
you got to keep that in mind.
Definitely, yeah. Do you have any tips if someone right now, let's say they're saving up for the Hypoair filter, like free things that people can do? We mentioned opening the windows. I'm a big fan of house plants or just activated charcoal packs.
Sure, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think looking at what you're actually putting in your air is a good place to start. People are definitely a big source of pollution. So you're kind of stuck with yourself. But the type of chemical cleaning that you're using, the amount of things you're bringing into the environment, definitely dealing with any leaks. Very immediately, you got to take these things seriously. Again, considering, educating yourself on the air quality outside. When might be a good time to open your windows? Should you open them at night? Should you open at rush hour? There might be important things to consider. So I think educate yourself on what you're putting into your air, while you're trying to, save up for something to get the bad things out of your air.
I love that. That's super practical. Yeah. And I know, I think NASA's done some research on just simple house plants, right? Like snake plant, reducing formaldehyde. And
well, plants are, like we've talked about it a few times, but plants are an extremely important part of our natural process outside of how we purify our air. That is critical to Earth's environment to deal with air. So yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and I've been doing some research recently. I think the maximum, though, that plants can reduce mold, I've read, is like 40 to 50%. But even then, there's so much moisture, right, in the soil if you're watering them consistently.
Yeah, so humidity and moisture is a different, conversation. Obviously, too dry an environment is not ideal for a lot of people. Too humid an environment is ideal for mold. So you do have to consider those kind of balances. And yeah, when you're introducing too much moisture into an environment, there is the potential to grow mold. One of our clients, one industry that we serve is the winemaking industry. So in order to age wine, you have to have a very specific humidity, pretty high, and you put them in these caves essentially. And mold is something they deal with. You get mold on a barrel, you lose the entire barrel. So you got to deal with it actively. But yeah, that humid environment can definitely have its own consequences. But I would say plants in general are very positive, though.
Definitely. Yeah, I'd say it's good to have one in like each room, probably just as a rule, right?
It's great.
I like, since I'm into longevity, I think hydration is a big part of it. And I actually have a humidifier in my bedroom with one of your air filters, but
sure.
I turn it off when I go to bed just because the blue light that it emits.
Sure.
But I'll run, it's like a combined HEPA plasma wave humidifier, self-cleaning. And I love it. So that's my strategy for my bedroom is your filter. And then that's a Winix plasma wave.
Yeah. And in the future, we might come out with a product that combines some of those. We've kind of steered clear of that. I mean, there's a lot of good products on the market that can help you with, making, adjusting your humidity, increasing it, decreasing it. So at this time, our products don't touch it, but that's definitely, a factor in your air.
Yeah. Especially if someone drinks or goes out and parties. I've done the personal test where the next morning there's no humidifier and I wake up like a prune and then sleeping with the humidifier. It's like I've been drinking water all night and rehydrating. I think people often overlook that.
Yeah.
Then you have the mold. So it's a lot of factors.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, like with all this stuff, I mean, we're encountering MRSA all the time, but you get too much of that, you get it in a wound. That's really, really dangerous. So there is mold in up to 100% of homes is the estimate. I mean, it's kind of a simple stat, pretty much every home has mold, but that's how much of it, is it really growing out of control? That and what types? That's where the problems come.
Yeah, when you get into like flesh-eating bacteria, I used to carry leather gloves in my car door for when I went to the gas station.
Sure.
And then now, just practically, I make colloidal silver by myself, so I use that as a hand sanitizer.
Sure.
Or I've used like a silver handkerchief.
Mm-hmm.
But
sure.
Yeah, the amount of things we encounter is kind of freaky when you think about it. I mean,
it is. Yeah, it can get in your head a bit, and but that is part of just our bodies are built to deal with some of this, but you don't want to overexpose yourself. Some of these contaminants can become very deadly, and in the wake of a lot of the superbugs, there's a lot of dangerous stuff out there for sure. And I'm extremely heightened when I'm taking a kid, to the emergency room or something. There is nothing to protect you in that waiting room. Nothing. You don't want to know the last time they cleaned that chair, and they're not doing nothing with their air. We're trying to help some people with that and really change how, our culture, deals with some of these contaminants. But there is quite a bit of a revolution of understanding when it comes to these contaminants that we're kind of a part of, and I think our culture is becoming more aware of. You look at way back when the Black Plague or something, you look at these plagues and the hygiene differences between then and now. Well, there's going to be some of that in the future. They're going to look back at this and say, "Whoa, you weren't doing anything with your air in that environment. You weren't cleaning that. How often were you cleaning that, and what were you cleaning it with?" I think there's going to be a lot of that in the future.
These major cities are almost like death camps, like LA, Seattle, San Diego, Austin, New York. It's just people say, "Oh, it's target practice for our immune system." Like George Carlin had a funny skit, but not to the degree we're dealing with. It's like we're getting bombarded, maybe, 100,000% more than we used to.
Yeah. Well, I think one of the worst stats out there, and it varies somewhat, but 1 out of 20 people that walk into a hospital get an infection from the hospital. It's called an HAI. So 5%. And that's just one environment, but that's where they track it more. But it's the case of a lot of other ones. There's one study I liked in University of Arizona. One of the universities in Arizona did a study on someone that came to sick He came to work sick, excuse me. And by lunchtime, the number of surfaces that had that cold is incredible. So just one person, comes to work sick, and just within a matter of a few hours, they track how many of the high touch surfaces have now been exposed, to that virus. It's, it really makes you think. Cause it was, just within 4 hours, over half of every high touch surface, had the virus.
Wow. That's wild. So David, could you talk a little bit about the different models that you have and the differences? It's mainly the square feet that they cover, right?
So our two primary technologies, APCO and polar ionization, are either in all or some of our products. So that's one consideration. And then we do have products that have HEPA and carbon filtration as well built into them. So those are the other aspect. But our main residential products are broken up into two categories: those that you plug into the wall and those that are installed in your HVAC system, so into your AC system itself. So those require professional installation. Licensed contractor, electrician, HVAC guy actually has to install them. But the benefit of those is they're covering every room and duct that AC system covers. So what
that'd be like if you own a home, that's probably the way to go.
That's one way to go, definitely. It's something to consider, because one of the difficulties with a home is the floor plan and doors. So, even if your home is, say, 1,000 square feet, but it's in this really narrow floor plan and you keep your bedroom door closed all the time, even if we have a unit that's powerful enough to cover 3 times the amount of square footage, it's not going to work as well because your door's closed or airflow is really limited. So that is an important consideration. So our plug-in units, are broken up into a couple categories. Our G3 series is our most common one. We're actually, experiencing some back orders on those, but those have a 1,000 and a 3,000 and a 3,000 extreme, and that correlates to the coverage. So 1,000 square feet, 3,000 square feet. The 3,000 extreme is for higher contaminant situations. So it's not a larger square footage, but you've got mold, you've got dogs, whatever it is, you got more going on. You need some more firepower. Then our other, big series is the iAdapt. Those have smaller coverages. So 150 square feet up to 650 square feet because of the filtration. So you've got HEPA and carbon filtration there. They're able to deal with the air quicker. They also have some smart features like a sensor and an app where you can control it, but your coverage is diminished, as well as your cost of filters. So it's just something to consider. Sometimes that's overkill. You don't need all that filtration. Sometimes you do. And a lot of times that's just a choice for our customers. But the G3 series is going to give you your most bang for the buck, and you don't touch them for 2 years. And then you replace the APCO cell. That's all you do. No filters to change, wash, nothing. And then our smaller products is the Air Angel, which you've mentioned. It's a portable unit, covers 250 square feet. Also has a car adapter, so you can take it on the go in a carrying case. And then our latest product we just launched, it's still in pre-sales, is the Mold Guard. Plugs right into the outlet. And we brought that out to make covering some rooms more attainable and affordable for people. So, you don't need one of our more powerful units, but you've got a room that's more isolated. So that's our lowest cost unit. It covers 100 square feet.
Awesome. And just a few closing questions. So would you say like a G3, this is kind of my strategy, the G3 unit plus just vacuuming, is that a good combination? Because eventually the particles will settle on the floor, right?
That's right. So we're either be breaking down contaminants and getting them out of the air that we breathe. There's a variety of methods there. Sometimes they'll get sucked up into your HVAC system. And because they're larger now, they can be trapped by your other filters. So there's a few ways of doing that. But yeah, definitely that's a great combo.
Awesome. And then the last thing you reminded me of, you mentioned dogs. I have a lot of friends with extreme, like deathly cat allergies.
Certainly,
I have a cat, and I think you told me a story once on the phone how someone could be super allergic to a cat and be in the same room with this filter. Is that right?
Yeah. So, in general, we're careful to only make environmental claims, just as a disclaimer. So, we get rid of the allergen. How that affects you is up for you to decide. We get rid of the virus. How that affects you is up for you. But one of our actually colleagues, very allergic to cat. Too bad he fell in love and married a girl with like 3 cats. So tough, I got to deal with it. And all of his family is allergic to cats. So used to have a ton of trouble, put our units in there. He stopped having, symptoms unless he actually physically picked up the cat. So you're getting, all the things that are allergens in the air out of the air, so you're getting less exposed, and that's giving you a lot of relief. And when it comes to animals, I guess a few other stories. We sell to dog kennels. Dogs get sick too, just like people. So kennel cough is a big thing. The odors there are crazy. So we actually had one kennel install some of our units. They called us back a couple days later, said, "These don't work at all. We're returning them." We're like, "Great. 30-day money back guarantee. No problems. We got you covered." After we accepted the return, then they came back and called us and said, "Hey, we're so sorry. We didn't realize how bad it smelled until we had removed the odor and then it came back," because they gotten so used to it that by us removing it, they're like, "Well, we can't tell any difference." Well, it's because your nose became used to it. And then when it came back, now they came back and said, "We're so sorry." It really was working. And then one last story. We had a client, they had some dogs. They installed our units, taking care of it, didn't think much about it. They went away for the day or something like that. And they came back and their home smelled nothing like an animal. And they got worried and they said, "Did our animals run away?" and so like it smelled so different that they were shocked and they worried for saying, "Oh, our animals ran away." But no, it's just because they couldn't smell them.
Wow.
So yeah, we definitely have a lot of animal clients. We love animals. So
that's incredible. Yeah. With cats, especially, the litter box is just, at least dogs go outside with the cat litter box. It's made a huge difference just putting that in my laundry room, my litter box. I have a little
we definitely hear that application quite a bit too.
Yeah, very cool. So, David, this has been awesome, just jam-packed with a lot of information. I'm sure we've blown a lot of minds with the science. And I have you guys featured on my website. It's matt-blackburn.com. You could also find the products at hypoair.com. And if you use the coupon code Blackburn, you save 10%. So it's Blackburn, just like it sounds, and you save a little bit of money. So thanks so much, David. That was awesome.
And I would just say, we're happy to answer questions. We've got engineers and scientists that can get very specific. We've got a lot of info on our site as well. But we're also happy to help you make decisions, because, this can be a bit overwhelming, it can be complicated. So, if you have questions, reach out. We will be happy to help you find a solution.
And I just want to second that and say, you've sent me so many PDFs of all the studies, and that's really what sold me on this technology, is not the claims, but the actual research and proof that they work. So,
right. And, in our technology section, we do break down some of the common technologies out there, the pros and cons, strengths and weaknesses. We try to simplify some of the jargon that's out there and the claims that take place. So, we're trying to make this more bite-sized, even though it is a complex topic.
Yeah, I think just last thing, in one of our conversations, you mentioned one of the popular filters. Like, there's some red flags to look for, right? If they're making claims or omitting certain information.
Oh, sure. Yeah, that's we do laugh about it a little bit. 35%, quieter, 50% more effective. Then what? So you'll see that a lot. 30 million times better. Well, then what? But so that is a common thing you'll see on a lot of sites out there. We don't want to, talk bad about anyone in particular, but you also don't see coverage listed often. So most air purifiers out there are just an air purifier. What you use it for is kind of up to you. Our coverage estimates are estimates, but we do try to give you ballparks of how much they can cover. But yeah, a lot of sites out there don't mention specifics. They talk about percentages and just kind of general claims versus specific coverages, amounts, technologies, things like that. So they keep it a little ambiguous.
Yeah. Great point. Yeah. I think in the health community, especially the alternative health biohacking community, we need to be really careful about claims and, maybe this is the case and really look at proof.
Right. And, anytime that's, one size fits all too, is possibly a red flag because this is a complex thing we're dealing with. People have very, very, very different situations. So.
Yeah, well said. And it's like with water, I talk about RO versus distilled, well water. We have all these different types of waters, and it's really context, same as air, because where you live matters with your municipal water source as well as your outdoor air. So air and water are kind of interconnected in that way, and there's so much context involved to take into account. So have fun with it and experiment.
Oh, definitely.
but I would recommend people start with your filter because it definitely is the best one I've found. So awesome. All right. Well, thanks, David, and I'm sure we'll talk soon.
Well, I hope you enjoyed the some would call rerun, I would say best of show. A lot of people have not heard that episode because it was more than 2 years ago when I recorded that with David. I just saw David last week. He came out to my house and gave me a little consultation of my HVAC system, and I learned more about how it works and the possible solutions to implement to increase the quality of air here in the home. And it was really fascinating, all of the little details that go into it. I actually installed 3 of their bipolar whole house units in my HVAC system. So this is the first home I've ever lived in that had cooling and heating in the vents. And just installing a few of these throughout the house has made a huge difference. I notice I don't sneeze as much. Whereas at my home up in Idaho, I would have these sneeze attacks, and who knows what was causing it, seasonal allergies from local flora or my cats, who knows, but with these 2 different types of ions that David talked about, those can really effectively inactivate viruses, bacteria, mold, and also allergens. If you have a HVAC system, I highly recommend you purchase one of their bipolar units, their whole home units. They're really affordable, $700 right now, and then you actually save even more when you use my discount code Blackburn. It was really easy. I had an electrician come out and he plugged them in to the 220 volts and put them right where the airflow is, basically. There's different ways that you can mount it. And unfortunately, a lot of the places in my home are really high up. And so the servicing on this thing is just cleaning the brushes. And how often you do that varies. That's a question I have for David in our next show. Every 6 months would probably be practical for me to get to it. And it's just cleaning off those 2 brushes. That's the only maintenance. It's really easy, and even easier if you have better access than I do and it's not in the ceiling. And the thermostats I had on the wall were old 20-year-old Honeywell thermostats, and they only had a heating and a cooling function. And David told me to upgrade to something like the Ecobee smart thermostats. So I purchased those, and I've been really loving it because they have this fan feature this automatic fan feature where you can turn on the fan for 5 minutes every hour, or 10 minutes or 20 minutes, whatever you want. And the purpose is when you combine it with their whole home unit, you're actually cleaning the air 5 minutes every hour. And these things cover 2,400 square feet. So you're actually cleaning surfaces, neutralizing fine particles or particulate matter at the 2.5 micron size, neutralizing bacteria, mold, viruses, and even VOCs, volatile organic compounds. The technology tab on the Hypoair site is great because it goes into all the different types of filtration and their strengths and weaknesses. And it says the weakness of polar ions, while effective over time, it is less powerful against heavy VOCs and odors than APCO or carbon filtration. So as they say on their website, it's really about a combination and about having a strategy. But I just love their whole philosophy around it. They sell upgraded HVAC filters. That's another thing he showed me, is it was pretty much a spider's web looking thing that was in my vents. So we're talking about the intake vents. It was pretty much filtering nothing, but putting in activated carbon in all of the intakes makes a huge difference and really reduces the amount of units that I have to have around the house. This could be just a total replacement for having all these air filters littered around in different rooms. This is a lot more aesthetically pleasing and more effective way to do it. You're utilizing the structure that's already there in the home and just upgrading the ability of it to filter the air. And if you live in a city like Los Angeles or Seattle or anywhere where it's really population dense, New York City, check out their window ventilation filters. I think this is really cool, especially if you have sliding glass windows. So windows that slide up or horizontally. You can connect one of these window ventilation filters and actually filter the outside air. So you're still getting fresh air, but you're filtering it as it's coming through the house. I think that's really next level and really innovative. And I just love what they're doing at this company. So if you use the discount code Blackburn on any of the products at hypoair.com, you'll save 10%. Again, I endorse all of their products. I love everything that they're providing. Really high quality stuff. My website is matt-blackburn.com. You could see my CLF protocol there: calcification, lipofuscin, and fibrosis. These are 3 accumulations that inhibit cellular function over time. And there's different solutions to all of them. So calcification is often a magnesium and vitamin K2 deficiency, but it could also be a vitamin D deficiency or a vitamin D excess. Lipofuscin is only composed of 1 to 2% heavy metals. Most of it is a deficiency in vitamin E. So just simply supplementing vitamin E, especially with an elderly person. My friend Bob Linville did this on his grandpa, and he posts the photos often, the before and after, and you can see the age spots on his forehead and his skin fade over time with vitamin E supplementation. And that's not just for looks. You're actually improving brain function when you reduce lipofuscin, because you're just seeing what's on the surface, but under the skin, there's a lot more going on, and it's inhibiting autophagy and cellular recycling, which is pretty much the garbage recycling plant of our cells. Lipofuscin stops that. So vitamin E, there's also selenium, which is present in oysters. These nutrients help to minimize the accumulation of lipofuscin and perhaps even reverse it. Fibrosis or scar tissue is a really big deal. goes from irritation to inflammation to scar tissue formation. And fibrosis is really the end result of calcification and lipofuscin. So if you haven't read through that article, go and check it out. I'm continually going and updating it as I have my new understandings. I used to believe everyone had iron overload. No one was iron deficient. That's a really unbalanced perspective. I updated the article to include the more balanced view that iron deficiency and iron overload can exist simultaneously on the same planet. And the same thing with vitamin D. You can have vitamin D toxicity and vitamin D deficiency. And this is where I think the vitamin A toxicity folks have it wrong, because they think everyone is vitamin A toxic. It's a very unbalanced, narrow perspective to think everyone has a certain same toxicity. That's never the case. We're all individuals. We all have different exposures. We all grew up in different environments. So everyone is not going to have the same toxicity. It's going to vary per person. Personally, I had severe vitamin A deficiency. And I know that because I had pretty severe acne all throughout my childhood, which affected my social life. And that was caused by a plant-based diet, because I didn't like meat growing up, because I didn't have exposure to grass-fed meat. So I thought it was gross, which it was, because factory farm food is disgusting. So I mostly ate fish, and that created certain deficiencies because I wasn't getting the iron in red meat, and I wasn't getting a lot of the other nutrients that are really concentrated in grass-fed beef, for example, or bison. So it's really important to acknowledge where we came from and the context of our upbringing in determining which supplements we take, the dosages, etc. If you click on shop, you can see all of my recommended products. And actually on the front page, I just added the B complex that I take with me when I go out. I bring that and my ascorbic acid. Really big fan of supplementing B vitamins throughout the day. My friend Adam over at Lifeblood created a good one that contains B1, 2, 3, 5, 6, 9, 12, biotin, and inositol in the best forms. And there's no fillers or additives. And it's just a really great product, especially combined with ascorbic acid, especially if you're intermittent fasting or if you just feel stressed. Just upping your ascorbic acid, which supports not just the adrenals, but also the brain, which people forget about. And when you combine that with the B vitamins, you just have a huge stress buffer there. Another thing I bring with me is the Dojo Sweet Sweetener from Shen Blossom. This is from the Dojo-san Amachi leaf, and it's an alternative to stevia. A lot of people don't like stevia for whatever reason, the taste. They read some study. So this is a great alternative to that. And if you're out and you want to get some coffee, but you don't want to use any of the sweeteners they have available, just a few drops of this in whatever coffee if you're choosing while you're out, and you're getting some reishi mushroom and this really pure sweetener for blood sugar support. So the discount code Blackburn works on any of the Shen Blossom products. And then my brand is called Mitolife. You can find that at mitolife.co. We just released another new product. So we released the zinc carnosine. A lot of people are loving that. And then the newest one is called Jellyfish Jolt. It's wild collagen from 2 different species of jellyfish. And the studies on jellyfish collagen specifically are really fascinating for the immune system, to fight fatigue, to prevent UV-induced skin damage from excess sunlight. Protein and amino acids themselves are antioxidants, but when they're combined in these long chains called peptides, which are in collagen, then you get really unique benefits and increased antioxidant effect, even heavy metal chelation. There's an improvement of the gut-brain axis, of sleep, for mood, because amino acids are precursors to make our neurotransmitters, our brain chemicals. It's such a broad-acting product, and it's really cool because it contains all the different types of collagen in it. So opposed to marine collagen or bovine collagen, what's cool about jellyfish collagen, it contains types 1, 2, and 5, but a lot of studies will call it type 0 because it mimics all the types of collagen. So it's a really unique product, and I'm really excited to share it with you guys. So that's Jellyfish Jolt. Check out the zinc carnosine. Both products are incredible for gut health and restoring the gut. If you've had gut dysbiosis and a lot of intestinal distress, I would give both of those a try. Check out the Mitolife Academy on YouTube. There's 2 private videos every month and 1 live Q&A the last day of every month. Really exciting things here in the works. Now that I've moved down to Southern California, I'm working on setting up a studio where I could do in-person interviews. I know a lot of people in the health space live down here, so I'm really excited for that, just continuously providing you guys with better and better content and information. So stay tuned for that, and I'll see you guys next Friday. Stay supercharged.